Call the meeting to order.
Jim and Jen, do you want one of these? It's kind of
Yeah. Slide it across, yeah.
Yeah.
So, basically you wanted to get back together since we haven't seen each other since before Christmas and find out what's going on with the project and the cost estimate. So I'm gonna hand the floor over to Tim.
Yep.
On the agenda first, I put down the update on, the cost. No, I didn't put that first, I'm sorry. I put building inspector meeting first.
Which
Want to talk about that first?
Which I figured that this plan works well for that to talk through it. So I met with Damien, the building inspector, on Friday, just to run through our approach from a code perspective, as well as make sure there's no concerns in terms of our general approach to what we're doing in the building itself. The biggest question was to run through the approach to how we negotiate the unoccupied portion of the building, which is going to essentially remain as an educational use and not be sprinklered, versus the remainder of the building. Part of that effort and what I have to do and work through is, as this is a change of use, moving from educational to business and assembly, it triggers certain requirements in the building code, one of which is to reassess whether or not we hit the allowable area and the allowable height for the building. The allowable height for the building, we're fine. There's no problems whatsoever there. The allowable area, if you were to build this building today, it's not permitted, period, without sprinklers. So the difficulty that I was,
The building, the unused portion?
the entire,
Okay. Well, you do that.
further, we knew this already.
Right.
However, the unused portion is an issue if we don't sprinkler it now, which don't get too worried yet, because I'll go into detail about that. Because the way this works is it's a mixed use separated building, which means that we have fire separations between each of the individual uses. That allows us then to look at the proportion between the allowable versus the actual. And as long as the ratio ultimately is below 1, we're good. The problem is, because we can't call the entire building sprinklered, we have to use the non-sprinklered numbers at this building for phase 1, which the allowable areas for a non-sprinkler building are lower than a sprinkler building. Just makes sense because a sprinkler building is safer. So because of not sprinklering the unoccupied portion of the building over here, we've got to use the lesser number. So from that standpoint, the numbers don't work as it currently stands. The good news is in the future, it will work, and you'll be well within your thresholds and within the ratios. Talking through that with Damien, he's on board with that, he understands that, and that, as he put it, we are making the building better. We are making the building safer, and we are improving the situation as it currently stands. We're still going to have a technically, by the letter, non-code compliant building at the end of this initial phase. Okay? So the approach we need to take is what is typically called a compliance alternative. And essentially, he gave me a list of things that we're going to have to do, many of which we were already assuming, in terms of how we negotiate the separation and the safety for the two sides of the building. So that included making sure the emergency alarm, or fire alarm essentially, is up to date and functional in the unoccupied portion of the building. Provide a 2-hour separation between the two sides.
Oh, what? What is that? 2 hours?
So what that means, so a 2-hour separation, you have a wall. If you have a fire on one side, it should take 2 hours before that fire goes to the other side. That's the basic way to understand it. So the good news is we already typically have masonry construction throughout. So we're really only closing off some small areas where we've got to bridge the gap between them. Okay?
Can you just refresh my memory for a second?
Yep.
Because I was looking at old minutes today, and I could have sworn at least our original fire suppression system quote did do the whole building. There were sprinklers, certain type of sprinklers up in the unoccupied. I think they were called. Was it vertical
Probably a riser.
vertical pump and a
Oh, yeah, right.
pendant sprinklers?
Oh, and it's really.
And from our initial
In your
Well,
first quote.
in our
Yep.
quotes that we brought to the town.
Yeah.
I can send that to you.
Because that would definitely change the situation if we were to sprinkle outside at this point. Right now, which he's okay with, we're just providing capacity in a riser connection so that you can in the future sprinkler.
I'm okay with that if it's cheaper and it's open and it's better. Yes,
Yeah.
but okay, then
And so there are more things on the list, which granted a lot of these things you have to do regardless. So it's making sure we have sufficient fire extinguishers in that unoccupied portion, something you'd have to do regardless. Making sure you have emergency egress lighting, exit signs. Again, if you were using that space in any way, you need it anyways. And then the last piece is that space truly would have to be unoccupied. I mean, we're not using it for storage, it's truly unoccupied.
that's the crunch.
That's what I figured.
Yeah,
Your
because
response.
I thought we talked about though, like putting the fire suppression through the whole building, didn't we?
That's what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
That was the plan.
I thought the plan was to see what the price was, because might as well do the whole building now.
Right.
And then depending what the price was, if it was too high, we were just putting risers in. And I thought we were putting risers in with heat detectors.
Oh, no, these are post. I have the ones, but not before this kind of meeting.
And it could be that we wind up there and we sprinkle the whole building,
Right.
as long as the budget allows.
Right.
If the budget doesn't allow, then that's a really low-hanging fruit to pull out and defer to future
Right.
requirements.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive things are already done.
Right.
Yep.
It literally is just pipes left.
And then you.
So that's kind of the big ticket question in terms of how we approach. Because if we don't, it's achievable. We also need buy-in, which that's part of the question I wanted to bring to the group of who should I be talking with from the fire department, which granted, to your point, may want to be something we hold off on until we have numbers, if we have to have that conversation.
Well, it's achievable if we don't use the upstairs as storage.
You get
Right.
no intention to using it as storage. Not a piece. There's a new reality comes about.
Right. So if it's truly unoccupied, that's really the idea. Is it's unoccupied. You have access, obviously, for maintenance issues, or if an alarm goes off, or if you have a trouble or anything like that. You can go in for maintenance purposes, but you're not actively using the space. Is the main thing. So that's essentially how that ends up working out to make this work for phase one. Yes.
Now, this information is coming from you.
This is based on doing code review as well as then reviewing it with Damien, the building official here.
So the architect did the code.
I did the code review. So this is based on looking purely at the code, running the numbers, seeing where the numbers land. And like I said, if the entire building is fire protected, the numbers work. If we choose to not do the one side, the numbers don't work, and we just need to do this compliance alternative method, which again, all of the requirements we're generally doing anyways. Okay?
But if, when our cost estimation comes back,
So right now, the way that we have it structured, and I assume it must have been a miscommunication at some point, we have fire protection on only the left-hand side. That's what's gonna be the estimate. With capacity and the risers for hookup on the right.
yes, I don't think there was a miscommunication. I'm
Okay.
thinking back to what we originally wanted.
Yep.
Then what we came to was the
Right.
risers.
Right. So if the, knock on wood, everybody, if the number ends up quite a bit lower than where we have, then we can reinvestigate extending it.
So the part we're talking about, Tim, does it include like where the potential COA is, like the cafeteria? Does it include that as well?
Yes, so the entire renovated area. So let me try to figure out a way to do this quickly. So essentially, this whole zone, that did not work, but this whole
Okay.
zone
Yeah.
ended up being a mess.
So basically, anything above the stairs or downstairs?
Correct.
Is the would be the unoccupied?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And when you say risers, what do you actually mean by that?
A pipe.
It's a pipe connection. So essentially, it's got the T's and such in it already. So all you have to do is uncap it, just put the new pipe in, and just run.
And charge the system.
Okay.
We're not gonna treat that as
Say that again.
when they price this out, we're gonna treat that as an
To put the other, to sprinkler the other side. Currently, no.
So the estimator is only sprinkling the occupied.
Correct. Granted, like I said, the capacity is all there for the other. The only alternate we have right now is for the windows on that unoccupied portion.
If we can figure out the square footage of what's.
We'll be able to figure out
to increase the cost. We'll need to increase, we just need to run equipment connected, so we'll just carry. Right. I think that'll get you close enough.
Yeah, we can get approximately there based on the numbers. Once we get it. Okay. The second piece I discussed had to do with plumbing counts for restrooms, which we don't have a lot of real estate to go crazy with bathrooms. So the approach right now we have built into the plan essentially whether you divide it evenly, 9 fixtures for men, 9 for female, or you have 10 and 8, which the way that the building code works, they're typically more on the female side in terms of how the calculations work. However, that's this one. Make this bigger. Okay. The issue is doing a pure calculation on numbers, which granted, when you use the code for calculating occupancy of how many people you expect in the space, in most cases, it's more people than you're going to have. And in our case, in many cases, when you're full on the assembly side, you're likely not going to be full or maybe not even open on the business side. So that's part of what I discussed with Damien, the building inspector, because this is an approach that I've often taken with existing buildings where you can work backwards from the number of fixtures to produce how many people can you have maximum within the space. So right now, if we, based on a calculated occupancy, we could have 366 people for assembly in the building concurrent with business. That would mean we're required to have 12 water closets for women and 8 for men. We have the 8 for the men. We're missing 2 on the female side. So if we assume non-concurrent use, however, and we work backwards from the 8 fixtures, or 9 fixtures rather, if we subdivide the fixture count we have in half, you can have up to a maximum of 500 people for assembly use when none of the other portions of the building are in use. So if you don't have outside of office hours, essentially, you could have 500 people within the building. If you have concurrent use, working backwards and looking at a reduction in assembly, you're reduced down to 290. So the question is that workable? Is that an issue?
So last time we had 500.
That's what I was trying to think, what else we had?
Marijuana, no, it would have been before me.
Yeah, so.
Marijuana wasn't 500 people, but, seminary was.
Down the seminary had a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So
but in,
total is 500, sorry,
you're right,
total is
let's
500.
say all those numbers again. 500,
So
But if we're doing an assembly and we're holding,
290.
So if you have the business, the offices are open, functional, your maximum in assembly is 290. If the offices are closed, your maximum is 500.
For assembly, but so.
For assembly.
So occupancy for assembly, you have 366.
That's what it calculates without doing any
Oh.
sort of. So the way that code works is it stipulates for assembly, if you're non-fixed tables and chairs, which I assume is most of the time what we're gonna have, it's 15 square feet per person, is how you calculate it. So taking purely just the area we have associated with the assembly spaces, so our multi-purpose rooms and the gymnasium and our meeting rooms here, we're sitting at 366 people.
Okay, I was thinking something different. Go back to your.
Yep.
When you say assembly, we're thinking about town meeting. We're not gonna have town meeting in the cafeteria. Town meeting will be pushed to a second, the part we're not
To the-
occupying right now.
Okay.
So for town meeting purposes, put on bigger numbers right now.
I'm just a little confused with 500 for the assembly.
Right. In.
If outside of office hours, yes.
Outside of office,
Yes.
which means there's 210 for office hours.
290.
290 for office hours.
And assembly.
Because
Oh, what
essentially,
you're saying, Jim, so
What
you
is
think
it?
210 people would be coming in from business?
no, it's not quite that. Because the issue is what I'm able to do is I'm working backwards for 500 based on the calculation, which essentially is for assembly, you need one fixture for every 25 up to 200 people, plus one more for every additional 50 people up to 500, and then it jumps again. And essentially, when we're not occupied by any other use besides assembly, I can take those numbers straight and work backwards and say, I have 9 fixtures. The first 8 of them are going to go towards that 200. And then the last one is another 50. That puts me at a capacity of 250 for female. The way it works is female is the most restricted in terms of needing the most fixtures. I can double that then to find out our total occupancy, which is going to be 500. Where it gets different and why the numbers don't quite jive in terms of how much you have on the other side is because the business use and the storage use, the calculations are different. And so what I'm doing is not reducing our business occupancy or the storage occupancy, only pulling people out of the assembly to get our number down to where we hit the 10 here. Does that make more sense?
So 290 for the assembly, how many for the business use?
So for business use, we have 83 times 2, 166. And again, that's based purely off of a calculation. So that's 100 square foot per person. So it's, again, the way the code works, this typically gives you more than you're ever going to have, particularly when it comes to other uses. Assembly often is pretty close or closer, but business use definitely, you're getting more people than you're likely ever gonna have in there for that purpose.
But then these numbers are gonna change if and when we open up the second half of the building.
Correct.
But there's more bathrooms on the other side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to open more bathrooms when you get to that point.
There's 2 sets on the other side.
Yeah.
So this doesn't take into account the bathrooms that are at the top of the stairs?
No.
This is just all in the first floor.
These are
So
all
it's just the,
in our occupied and renovated space.
And the one, and there's gonna be bathrooms in the,
So we have 2 single users going here. And then we have a bank of 4 units for men and for women here, and then another here.
and the one over the
Yeah.
TA's office is gonna be one out.
Yes.
what do you think?
So that's everything you talked to him about?
Yep.
And he's set with your
Yes.
assumptions?
Yep, essentially, once we figure out the final direction we want to go and I confirm it, which, like we said, I think makes sense to wait until we have the estimate and run the numbers, and confirm kind of the list of compliance alternative items we need to do with the fire department. If we get to that point, then I document that, send it to both parties, and that's what we'll do. Okay?
Okay.
What do you have next on there?
Cost estimated preliminary numbers. Which we
So-
haven't yet.
I talked a little bit about that. I tried to get even just a vibe from them. They played mum. I did get a commitment though that they are going to have the estimate for this Friday. And so I'll distribute that to the group. I think for the purposes of making sure that next meeting is most fruitful, I'll send it to you all. Raw. Usually we like to review it, make sure there are no misses or errors or omissions, but I want to make sure we have a good chance to talk about it on Tuesday. I talked with my group of consultants this morning. Everyone's committed. We're going to make sure that we at least get the high level comments together prior to the meeting on Tuesday.
So, I mean, looking at this timeline, it says committee approval on 120, we meet 121.
Yeah, we're essentially a week behind from where we wanted to be from an estimate standpoint.
Right. Could we pick up that week somewhere?
Well, I think the idea would be what I would propose that we work with is we're still developing documents here. I think we need to spend that next week once we get the estimate in place, finalizing what the scope is, any cuts or changes, or God forbid, or God hopefully, we get some additions. We'll see where we land. Get that kind of hammered out, and we'll be able to essentially immediately start running into CD development. Because we're already, essentially, at least on the architectural side, we're already starting that anyways, with what we're doing. It's really going to be, at this point, we're kind of in a holding pattern until we see, have we exceeded where we need to be budget-wise, or are we below? And that's really going to determine our path forward.
To me, planning to have what I'll call systems discussions with the committee in the presentation. Is that going to come with the estimate? Because they had to make some assumption and what to carry from HVAC and what.
Yep. So we have that built in, and I'll issue what we sent to the estimator to the group following this meeting today. So you'll have that. I think what we can do, and we might want to have a separate meeting and see if I can get the engineers on that. Ideally, if we could do a remote one, because I don't know if I'll be able to get them in person.
After Tuesday's meeting, you mean, or?
Potentially. or I don't know if we'd be able to, where we'd be able to fit in it. Because that might be a fairly large discussion in and around and in addition to
Wait, I don't understand.
estimate. So he's talking in terms of,
I'm trying to take a pragmatic approach to discussing alternative systems.
Yep.
Should the one that come back be too expensive.
Yep.
Right, so that's normally what I would consider a process that's done during DD,
right,
and we're sort of
we're kind of
skipping DD to some
Yeah,
degree, or
doing a hybrid.
combining it with
Yep.
a little bit of CD and a little bit of SD, but I'm just trying to make sure that that discussion is probably gonna have to be had.
Me too.
I would agree. And that probably wants to be in my mind immediately following the initial budget, whether it's the following week or somewhere around there, we can get the schedule work.
We don't need a whole committee meeting for that. We could get a subcommittee,
Okay.
which would be easier then to get a date.
Yep.
But I'm still not sure if you want that before Tuesday when we meet again,
I think it makes sense after because we're gonna get a good sense
Tuesday.
on Tuesday of if we need to have a light touch or a heavy hand.
Okay,
And that's really what we need to know, one way or another. Whether we're really gonna be leading right on the plans or not.
So,
I hope not to. But I really don't have a good sense right now. My
it's like good or
estimator,
bad.
my estimator was not helpful. Is the main point of it. Because I told them what the budget was, and I said, "Well, do you have a good sense?" And they played mum. So
we had some sense when we had all our estimates done.
Yeah.
We just had
Yeah.
to send a few of them. I know that some people think that we're a little under. But we'll see.
the biggest question mark that I anticipate in terms of scope and cost that may or may not have been in your original numbers is how much partitioning and reconfigure of space you had by department as opposed to departments being each their own sort of open office. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and we can reconfigure it back to,
Yes. And that's the easiest cut in my mind for us to work through. And hopefully, if we do have to do any cutting, it can be contained. So, we'll see. Everybody cross your appendages. So, just in general, I'm going to run through some of the things from the plan. Generally, it all aligns with what we've reviewed previously with the program plan. There have been some slight adjustments just based on massaging it into the scanned version of the building. So it's based on true dimensions now, as well as integrating how we interface with the windows. One of the things we've done as a way to make sure that your windows are as economical as possible is we've standardized the size so that it's all unitized. And as I think we had discussed last time, where we have walls that then interface with or perpendicularly intersect, we're infilling the windows in those locations, which is what you see here. So that reduces also your number of windows. Windows are more expensive than wall, as well as your window is weaker from an energy standpoint than wall. So all of these things are going to help you, whether from an initial cost or ultimately an operation cost. The other piece that you'll see, less so in terms of the senior centers and council on aging, more so when you get to the office part. And what I might do, let me just rotate this. Rotate this page. And one page. Rotate. Yes. Just so I can try to fit it better, show it bigger. So there have been some adjustments on this wing, primarily due to two things. One is the existing scan, receiving that, reconciling the actual dimensions. The second is we went through this plan and maybe let's go back to this one. This one might be an easier one. Working on this plan to minimize as much as possible the walls we're pulling out from the dividers between the classrooms. So that was one of the things that we did in the plan as well. So generally the relationships that we had been maintained. I think the primary swap we ended up making is that the assessor ended up moving over here because they fit fairly well. We did the vault storage as two parts, one of which is accessed directly from the town clerk.
How about we move the assessor?
I think we may have. Let me, I can pull it.
Oh, wait, it's not. We don't have to do it. Yeah, I thought in the third is we moved the you had the assessor move, and then we moved it back over to the hallway.
So the hallway over here, the last time we discussed moving the admin assistant and the admin office over here.
Mhm.
And as well as their meeting room
Yeah, I remember that.
for privacy as well as to make that.
Oh, but keeping the assessor office where it is, so when he has to meet, he goes over there for privacy?
So the assessor's over here. So the admin, town administrator.
Okay, I just had a brain fart. I'm okay now.
Okay. I don't know
I see what you did.
Yeah,
if
okay,
different departments.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I had a moment where I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, that works. So, and we just kept the two meeting rooms side by side here towards the entry. They can be shared. More public. They have a folding partition between the two.
Yeah.
They're associated directly across from conservation planning and the Board of Health. We originally had them next door. Spacing and sizing, working with existing walls, worked better to have them across. We've tucked the kitchenette in here. Town collector then works in this way, and we're able to then build the treasure into there as well to connect. Then we have the building official, copy room, your two bathrooms, and the town clerk. So generally stayed the same. It's more we shifted some of the organization around to fit within the existing walls.
Can you send that as a PDF or something?
Yes, I'll send this whole thing over to you.
Got a question, Tim?
No, I just couldn't see them.
Oh, that's right, anyway.
Just gonna send it.
Yeah, and if there's any particular spot you want to zoom in on or look at in more detail, we can. So this package is what was sent to the estimator, which I'll send to you, so that you'll have that on hand, for the discussion when we get into the estimate. We have a preliminary, RCP in here with the abatement and the sprinklering. We have to pull out the existing ceilings that are there. Based on the existing tile that are sagging quite a bit, we are proposing a 2x2 in place of the 2x4 that's currently there. which should help significantly.
RCP stands for,
Reflected ceiling. Anytime I say something where it's archy speak,
yeah.
let me know. Like I said, with windows, the unoccupied portion we have set up as an alternate, and where we have the new going in place, we've got shown in here clearly where we're infilling, and you'll see the W notes are the unit of window, and we've condensed down to as few types as possible because you usually get efficiencies and cost when you do size.
What's the infill of the window?
So infill,
Full brick?
no. So because we're still going to maintain the opening in the sill
Yep.
that's there, what we're assuming right now is essentially a shiplap panel, which we would paint, and we can discuss with you what that actually wants to look like. Stud framed, insulated. Yeah. And wherever possible, we've tried to make sure that when we're infilling, this was also part of the massaging of the plan, that we're creating a somewhat intelligible rhythm to the way the windows are laid out. So that you're not creating something funky on the outside by what you're doing inside.
Some architectural design.
Yes, exactly. So you'll see that we have some repeating patterns going through there in terms of how that was approached. For windows, for our standard window, which is what we have on our side of the building for the renovation, what we proposed for the sake of the estimate is a fiberglass system. We've had really good luck with it in the past. It gives you very good thermal performance, and you also don't have to maintain it with painting year after year. For the double hung, which exists on the unoccupied portion, we're looking at Marvin windows for both types, which is it's a wood aluminum clad wood framed single hung window. On that side, we couldn't do fiberglass because of the size. They were too large. For lighting, and a lot of this, again, you'll see it when I send through the documents. But I can run through some of these. This is the general illumination lighting in the corridors. It's just going to be a flat panel, 2x2, not the 2x4 that's shown here. Just wanted one that had a photograph though. All lighting is going to be LED, so it will be dimmable. And you'll also have the benefit then of the energy conservation. In the gym, we've got this fixture. Again, it's going to be high up there. And this shape is really just based on getting enough diodes into the space so that you can really pump the light down because it's high. The office space, what we're proposing is a pendant fixture, because if you recall in the classrooms as they are, which we're going to maintain, you have a low to a high. It's one of the few features in the school, and we want to maintain that not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but also from a utility standpoint, because that gives you your pathway for ductwork and for sprinklers, etc. So we'll run pendants below. Very similar fixture that we're looking to use in the restrooms over the vanities. Just do it as a recess so you get some additional light at the vanity, and then we'll use the 2x2 for general illumination. Any questions on any of that stuff so far? Okay. In terms of finishes, we've given not colors or looks or feel. We're going to pull together a package which we'll review with you. Likely that will be early February when we'll actually have colors and kind of get through and pull together a palette in terms of direction we want to go. But the general approach is that we have carpet in your offices and conference rooms. Carpet tile, I should say. VCT, so vinyl composite tile, in your corridors, storage, kitchen, and multipurpose room. A gym floor, which is essentially very similar to a VCT. It just has more padding built into the tile itself in the gymnasium, is what we're carrying right now. We're painting the walls and using a rubber coat base. And then the 2x2 suspended ceiling tile, which we discussed before. The doors inside the building are pretty beat up. So right now we're carrying a flush panel wood door throughout. For those, again, depending on where prices come in, we may be able to salvage. Maybe we just refinish them. We can figure out that when we get there. A phenolic panel, which is
How you gonna address door hardware?
that's why right now we want to do new, because if you use the existing, we're likely going to need to cut up the existing door and do some patchwork to make new hardware work. Because none of the hardware right now is compliant for accessibility. So that's where right now, from the purpose of aesthetics, as well as there are quite a few doors that are really beat up, as well as the hardware, we're just proposing all of them new. That way you're on a level playing field. They're all at the same condition when you move in, and makes the hardware setup easier, as well as everything looks the same. It'll give you the best product in the end. We've got phenolic panels, which if you've seen those in bathrooms, they're kind of the plasticky material for the bathrooms, is what we're carrying right now. And then for millwork, which is the transaction counters, within each of the departments, all of that's just a half wall with then a plastic laminate top, which is essentially what you have on these tables. In the bathrooms, we have a solid surface top with a solid surface bowl for the sink. Make sense? So I more go through all this, more so you have a foundation of understanding kind of what's built into the estimate. And that way we kind of have an understanding of when we get it, what we're looking at and what can we start chipping away at or adjusting.
Tim, we'll look at the numbers. I think we should look at a final composition tile
Mm-hmm.
instead of a VCT, a final product, just in terms of maintenance. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Water as opposed to washing wax.
Yep.
Our bill of maintenance.
Right. Which I think is what we're essentially looking at right now. I just call it BCQ.
You know, that's what they just threw a flag.
Yeah, no.
So we're on the same page.
No,
We don't
and
want these guys to have to strip and wax the floors.
we avoid waxing wherever possible. So, because we've run into that left, right, and center as a concern.
Thank you.
But I'll make sure that's the case with my interior design. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I have to review. I have documents and I have the narrative, like I said, which I'll share with you, everything essentially that I have here. I think the last thing that I'll just briefly run through with you is where we are on the site plan.
Another question before you jump onto the site. What is your basis of design for mechanical system?
So mechanical right now. Let's go here. Okay. So it's all built into here. They are, so I think this is all their existing discussion. Yes, it is. So it's the next page. There we go, intent. So they're intending to reuse the existing steam boiler, supplementing it with a hydronic system with circulation pump, expansion tank, and air separator. So that will give you longer viability for the existing system that's there. Essentially, is the intent. The offices themselves, we're gonna pull the wall ventilators. So those are in those bookshelves that are on the furniture under the window. We're gonna pull that, infill the wall below, and then we're gonna supply heating and cooling using an ERV, which is an energy recovery ventilator, which is then going to have rooftop units associated with it. The senior center itself, they're using air handling units, which will be mounted on the roof. Also ERV.
How are you cooling the offices?
That's via, let's see, ERV. They're using a hydronic BRF, yeah.
So ceiling cassettes, I assume?
So
Yeah.
essentially,
He said, no, I was asking if it was a mini split. I don't know if that was an acronym or something.
yeah, no, it's in terms of the technology, it's very similar to a wall unit. Because it's all based on either expanding or contracting your refrigerant fluid to produce heat or to produce coolant, one way or another. And then the other piece that it works with in it's with a BRF, it's variable. So essentially the idea is it will change the flow based on the demand. And that's how it meets the demand. And it's drawing typically from either the outside, it's pumping the heat out of the building to cool,
Yep.
or it's drawing heat from the outside in, essentially, by either compressing or expanding the fluid, is essentially the general science behind it.
Sorry.
They're using DX cooling coils for the senior center itself. That they are talking about a split system there, so that's more like your wall hung unit. Whether we do it as a wall hung or it's a ceiling cassette, one or the other. Same thing for the classrooms for the senior center. For the kitchen, we'll need to provide makeup air, which that's the ventilation for it. The auditorium you're speaking of, that's the part in the unoccupied portion. Technically not doing anything right now, they just have an assessment of their use right now. In terms of how to potentially extend their lifespan. They are talking about unit heat on that side of the world, because we're gonna wanna maintain at least some level of maintenance, heat, not cooling, on that side, which is what they're discussing here. Yeah, so generally it's a mix between the VRF with ERV, energy recovery ventilator. So what that is it bringing in your fresh air for ventilation air. It's going to recycle air from inside so that if it's in cooling mode, it will pre-cool the air as it comes in, or if it's in heating, it's going to recycle air through so that then it can heat at least somewhat before it has to put in actual warmth, if that makes sense. I'm the layman speaking here, so hopefully, if I can understand it, hopefully you can. And I'm probably not putting it well, but
You do it fine.
gets the idea.
Bathroom exhaust.
Yep.
Direct, right?
Yes,
They're not circulating. Same thing with the kitchen.
correct. Yeah, that's all separate.
That's big.
Unless you're like a grocery store and you want to exhaust from a bakery to the front of the building. I've done that. It's crazy.
Entice them to the back.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. So on the site plan, we've updated per the last discussion so that we have our primary entry over here with our handicap parking located here. You have a drive behind, and then your parking essentially gets reestablished here and here. And we maintain then the loop through. And then currently, which was where we left it with the last discussion, on the fire pump, we have the tanks shown here with the pre-engineered building here, which will see right across the way.
Discussion. Those tanks are mounted, right?
Say that again?
They're mounted.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you can see here is that we're building up the grade.
Is that when they did the digging, the last email that we asked Gutlow to come, Gutlow?
No, the further digging is somewhere over here at the playground area.
Start searching for the
Oh, no, it's up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up here.
Yeah, this way.
Yeah. Do you know what happened with that?
I haven't yet, other than I hope to go low on it to get on the net, check it in and see where it is and get out here. The good news is from a leach field standpoint, at least on the plumbing fixture count, the kitchen is another animal, but from a bathroom standpoint, with the discussion we had earlier, were fewer fixtures than we were originally looking at, which helps that situation. Right? That's all I have for the moment.
That was a lot.
I went through it quick, so when I email this, don't fall out of your chair and see how many pages we have, because there is a lot of information available. I only really went in depth on the architectural. Everything's in here though. The narrative itself is in here, which goes through each individual system: architectural, structural, the fire protection, plumbing, HVAC and electrical, and the civil, just to lay out all of the assumptions that have been made up to this point. Okay?
And our cost estimate will have that all spiked up for each one of those systems.
Yes, so the cost estimate is going to be broken out, or it should be, based on all the work I've done with this estimator in the past. If you're familiar with construction documents, they're subdivided by divisions. If you've seen any of those documents before, so like you're going to have division 8, for instance, is openings. So everything related to like your windows, your doors, your hardware, it's going to fall under that. And they're typically going to have line items then for, okay, your new windows of this type, this much square footage, or this many number. So that's where, to Neil's point, once we get it and can review it and dig into it, it should be pretty easy to start, for instance, in the fire protection standpoint, see what the square footage number is and extrapolate that over to the unoccupied portion. Same thing's also true from the standpoint of if we decide we want to, say, start removing areas of casework, countertop, or walls, or doors, it's all itemized. So we'll be able to peel all of that away as needed.
Alright, so the third thing on the agenda is that we got bill number 2 from India and bill number 1 from Ethiopia. of which, Neil reviewed this, designer's bill. So we're okay to pay both of those, just to let you know. So there are copies in the books, I don't have a. No. Okay, well, they're right on par with the contracts.
Good.
Any other business? You said you haven't heard anything about the gun
No,
and the beach deal. So that leaves us to approve the minutes from last time. They're in your packet. So I will entertain a motion. Is anybody to approve them or take a minute to read them?
I'll make a motion to agree to decided that or close the ordinance.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then lastly, old business, I had put down there the rural development grant that we talked about when we met in December. I would like to invite Ann Goby to one of our meetings, so she can talk to us and explain what this grant's all about. It's opening soon, the application, this month, I believe. So we really have to get a start on that if we want to be considered. And again, the most important thing is that we have to have an economic development piece to our project, which would change the kitchen to a commercial kitchen for food and security. Which is how it was presented to the select board at the meeting a couple weeks ago by Chris. And the select board agreed that they wanted to pursue the grant. So, if I invite her to the next meeting, would that be enough since you've already done the cost estimate?
I would say that's not entertaining. Just because we're gonna have a full plate probably going through the estimate.
Sure.
After
Okay.
that, we
I just don't want to push off putting that application in.
What's gonna be the next
Going west.
the kitchen?
It's basically replicating this pool. Isn't yes.
What you said, yeah, so this kitchen's in the estimate, but yeah, I'm not really sure how this is gonna work, because you have to spend the money to get the money.
Right.
So that would change the scope of our project.
Right.
But I can't hear you, what?
To me, I think that would be approach because it kind of changed and it's a huge opportunity to go back to now.
Yeah, you'd have to go back to the town. Because we got maybe adding another $900,000, let's say, onto the cost of the project to get it reimbursed.
Right.
All right, I'll get her into one of our meetings to talk about that then.
Well, and essentially, the sooner we can figure out how we want to go with that, potentially the path that we can take on our side in terms of the design team is similar to another project I have going now where it's actually under construction now and we're doing the kitchen design now because it was all based on funding and negotiation and all the rest of it. So we left the kitchen itself as a white box, is what we call it. So it's essentially we hold the real estate for it. We'll mark it as future. We'll do everything related to, say, the ceiling, the lighting, the sprinkler, all of that stuff that you're doing regardless, so that it's carried through. But and we don't necessarily need to make that decision now, but that's an approach we can take so that we don't get into a situation where we're getting ahead of the horse, so to speak.
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong, the money doesn't have to be spent, it has to be appropriated to apply.
I think it's a reimbursement grant. It's a reimbursement grant, I know that. Hold on.
But I thought it was appropriated too, not necessarily spent. Because now we have it, we're nowhere to do it, so we're gonna get reimbursed. But I thought it was at least to be qualified as,
Lots of questions asked.
The magic is that you can't award a contract that you can't pay for.
Right.
So you can't go with the assumption that you're going to get reimbursed. We could design it into the project, but if it comes in over what the appropriation is, we can't make a project go over, we're dead on it. That's the issue. So you have to be prepared to pay for the grant, or to pay
For the
Pay for
project.
the project.
pay for the project cost, regardless of whether you get the grant or not.
Yeah.
But then if you get the grant, you would just apply less or spend less than you get. That's part of the
Yeah.
project.
Right.
Well, it's not. It is in one sense, but if the town appropriates the money.
It's gonna get done.
The
The
town-
plan was, I'm ready to get it
the town-
reimbursed.
not the-
Right, not just project standalone. So. So it has to be done by May? Yeah. We could put it in the next May town meeting, but, which means we have to start that now, and find out how much it's gonna cost to do, to make it, that's a whole addition to whole piece of paper. But it's a year of a grant. We wouldn't get it to next October, so.
That's why everything has to get done, to make sure we appropriate the money. I understand what the spending, but I think to apply, we have to make sure we have it, not that it's spent. And obviously it's gonna be spent in order to fit our time.
Did we say next October, you mean October 25?
Yeah, that's when they start to show.
So this coming October.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I thought the same as you at first. I'm like,
26?
Whoa.
yeah, so I don't, we have to have something to bring to the town by May.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do for that.
It would be. But at the same time, I still think it'd be beneficial for us to, if everything falls in place, it would benefit.
I guess we'll find out next week.
Yeah.
All right, so let's, definitely meet next Tuesday, 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Here?
Yep.
There's no select board meeting, right? Because Monday's a holiday, so select board meeting's on Wednesday. So this building is available,
Wednesday.
Usually the select board is Tuesday.
but they have something to do with it, so they're meeting on Wednesday. So we can be here on Tuesday. On 1/21 at 4 o'clock. And then I know we were trying to do standard every other week. That's gonna throw us into a, February 4th, I think the next time we meet. I wouldn't be here, you guys can meet without me, or which meeting.
Wait till the 11th.
Because what we can do in the meantime, whether we carry whether it's the 28th or the 4th, or we can figure out a different day for the MEP while you're gone. And then we can meet electrical plumbing, the engineers. We can meet with them while you're away, and then we'll be able to meet afterwards and have it in terms of systems. And maybe what I do is for the 11th, I can plan for us to have an initial finish package and bring the material designer potentially
So the MEP would be for the alternates?
to discuss the systems and based on where we land in terms of numbers, whether we want to make any changes and if there are efficiencies that can be made.
Probably 30%, 25 to 30% of your budget is going to be your mechanical
Very likely.
fire protection systems. So it's almost half of your project is in that cost. So I want to make sure you guys have a thorough understanding of
Yeah.
what you're buying.
Yeah.
So it's a big piece of the puzzle. And frankly, it will probably be one of the first places that we look in terms of cost cutting.
Oh, Would that be a whole committee meeting or subcommittee?
you had mentioned before potentially doing that as a subcommittee.
All right, you can do it when you don't have to wait, you can do it on the 28th. As long as you get the majority of stuff, that you can meet.
Well, I'm just working, just be like this.
MEP is 30% of the new construction.
You're essentially replacing.
Or essentially,
No, I'm saying it's a higher percentage.
in this
It
one,
could be.
it could be because we're not building the building itself. So to your point, yes, it could very well be significantly more than 30%.
So then you're talking on 121, we're all getting back together.
Yes, and that's all we know for now.
Okay.
And that's for the cost estimation. Documents.
Yeah, and the other I'll confirm with my engineers when they're available, and then should I coordinate with you to get that set up for the subcommittee? Okay.
And that's potentially your 128, right?
Yes.
Or it could be any day, because
Or
it's a
any-
subcommittee, it can be. Neil, so that's different though than your, no, that's the alternative systems meeting that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so,
Do we need internet or anything for that meeting? Or if you have a sub meeting? Are we doing Zoom or anything with any engineers?
So we may want to or need to, and the question is, if we do it virtually, does it get into that whole rigmarole or no? Of needing to be announced if it's a subcommittee?
I'll check on that.
Because if it doesn't, then I'm sure either Neil or I can easily set up the actual meeting itself.
Yeah, we don't use them though, we use Granby.
Okay.
Granby to go or go to Granby or wherever it's called.
Yeah,
Good meeting.
good meeting.
Thank you. I'll check into that.
Yeah. Find out, and then we can figure that out, because I don't know what kind of, we're gonna have definitely a lot more flexibility if it can be online to get the
You're not gonna have
the
a
engineers.
form, but I'll check on that. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to,
Well, one last item, which I discussed with you, and I think you discussed with the rest of the group regarding furniture donation.
I'm good with that.
Should I have Dawn, our interior designer, who's reached back out to the bank to let them know you're interested, start the ball rolling in terms of coordinating how that's all gonna work out. Who should they ultimately be coordinating with? Should that be through you or?
So just to back up, there's a project that's being completed by his firm who offered to volunteer all their office
Furniture.
furniture.
So we're doing bank renovations, and we have one branch that has
6 offices.
6 offices, and the furniture's fairly new. It's just more traditional wood furniture. They don't want to do that anymore. They're moving in a different direction. And we've asked them, would they be willing to donate it? They said yes. I went to Lynn to review it.
Went to the subcommittee, majority said yes.
Yeah. And so we've gone back now to say, okay, town's interested. Now we need to start coordinating how to make that happen.
I'll find out.
Okay.
So in other words, how to get the furniture here.
Yes,
Where
how
it's
to get it
stored.
here, where it's gonna store, so on.
Could it not go in that auditorium? Or no? Would it just
And
go?
West Street for
Well,
now?
it can for now, because it's until we're done and
Yeah, I don't see why
Got
not.
plenty of space
Let's
there.
find out. I'm sure the question's gonna be
the delivery.
how much furniture is it actually?
Yeah.
6 desks, 6 chairs, I don't know what. I don't
Well,
know.
and the desks themselves, they're full front, side, and I think they have a back, so they're good size.
So it sees. What if
They're seats.
Yeah.
This-
This is the air. What
They
was
will
that leak?
Yeah, put it upstairs and push the building.
Yeah.
Like, we need permission, right?
Yeah, still need that. ask.
I'll check on that tomorrow and I'll get back to you.
See what I'm saying now?
Yeah.
And as Chief said, we don't use it, which I think we're gonna, someone
Yes.
else in town will use it.
Exactly.
Well, and it's more a situation of, as Dawn told me, she's like, that furniture's really good. That's why she wanted me to call you. Once she found out the bank was interested in actually donating it, because otherwise they would have just thrown it out, which would have been a shame.
Yeah, it kills me.
Yes.
Really like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, unfortunately, that's what happens a lot. So when
Keep us on the dial.
we definitely will.
Who's gonna see the money, the numbers?
Yeah.
And this will all be a moot point. We don't know what's coming
That's
on
true.
Monday, on Tuesday. So,
We knocked out one though, thinking positive.
yeah,
Yep. Cross all
That's
the
right.
appendages.
yeah. All right, thank you very much.
That's not adjourned.
Second, all in favor?
I-
Okay.